I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of finance YouTube in particular. Graham Stephan, Dave Ramsey, Financial Diet, Minority Mindset, Plain Bagel, 2 Cents, and I know there are tons and tons of other finance YouTubers out there with tons of incredible information who I don't watch. Most of the stuff that I find from these YouTube channels is phenomenal advice. However, when it comes to certain financial principles, I feel that there is a depth within that principle that it's never really fully explored. Some of these ideas are radical and don't just apply to finance and investing, but can apply to your lives themselves. My name is Alex, and I have spent the last few years not only learning about finance from YouTubers and the internet, but by reading a wide variety of books. I'm a chemist by formal training, and so I have more of a scientific and analytical thinking mind when it comes to addressing some of these issues. I have an interest in philosophy, and I find that there is a balance between personal finance, and philosophy, and that the two actually go together. So what I'm hoping to share with you today is some information that I've learned along my journey, advice and ideas that I think could really help you on your own personal financial journey. Now, I am not a financial expert. I simply enjoy reading books and watching finance YouTube videos and having discussions with people about finance, but I myself am not a financial expert, and you should certainly consult a financial expert when making any financial decisions. My hope and goal is that some ideas that I have just help you along your journey. That being said, I think I may have come across what may be the single greatest piece of investing advice ever. Now, this investing advice is not just an Alex idea in the shower, but actually comes from a legit reputable source, which is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, widely considered to be the Bible of value investing. So I feel somewhat that there is some evidence, there is some legitimacy to this statement based on the source material. And that actually acts as a great segue to what the advice is, because the nature of a certain passage in The Intelligent Investor gives way to actually talking about the idea of legitimacy from others. And the passage goes a little something like this. But note this important fact: the true investor scarcely ever is forced to sell his shares, and at all other times he is free to disregard the current price quotation. He need pay attention to it and act upon it only to the extent that it suits his books, and no more. Thus, the investor who permits himself to be stampeded or unduly worried by unjustified market declines in his holdings is perversely transforming his basic advantage into a basic disadvantage. That man would be better off if his stocks had no market quotation at all, for he would then be spared the mental anguish caused him by other persons' mistakes of judgment. Damn, that's good! Holy cow! You know, Jason Zweig of the Wall Street Journal actually considers that one passage, that paragraph, is probably the most important passage in the entire book. More validation. So that's a very powerful passage. As a standalone passage, it already has a lot of really great information, but in addition, Graham has also set up several definitions about what he defines as an investor and a speculator that make the passage even more powerful. On the surface, that passage just has to do with looking at the price quote of an investment. Whether you bought a stock or a bond or just any kind of asset, it's just looking at the price that you paid and not worrying about how the price fluctuates on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, week-to-week, or month-to-month basis. But as long as the investor has done their due diligence in looking at the company and doing their necessary research and making sure that it's a quality company, you don't have to worry about the price. The market price itself shouldn't matter. So that, on the surface, is what this passage is talking about. But there are much deeper ideas within this passage. The first sentence of this passage is probably the most powerful investing principle I've ever heard. The true investor scarcely ever is forced to sell his shares. The key word in this sentence is forced. Nobody is forcing you to do anything. There's only 3 to 4 things that you can do, 3 to 4 actions that you can take. You can buy something, you can sell something, you can hold on to something that you already own, or you can actively choose not to buy or sell something. The act of not buying something I consider to be somewhat of an action. This is very simple. That's really all that comes to investing. If I want to buy a stock, you can buy the stock. You can sell the stock. You can do whatever. Those actions themselves are fairly simple, but investing itself is very complicated. It would be similar to saying basketball is just about dribbling, shooting, and passing the ball. But we know that basketball is a very complicated sport. Those are just the actions that are taken during the game, but the game itself is more complicated. Similarly, in investing, the actions of buying, selling, and holding on to assets is again fairly simple to actually do, but the detail and research and knowledge that goes into those things is very different. However, unlike investing, a game like basketball, there's actually an opponent, someone who may be highly skilled, and no matter how hard you try, that highly skilled opponent is going to stop you from doing those things. Dribbling, shooting, passing, things of that nature. But in investing, there really is no opponent per se. There's nobody who is forcing you to do or take action. No one's forcing you to sell a stock. No one's forcing you to buy a stock or a bond or an annuity or an REIT, a REIT. Whatever, like no one's forcing you to do that. Perhaps the only barrier to entry is actually just having the money to buy the asset in the first place. But aside from that, no one can force you to buy or sell something. And that's very important. We don't think too much about that idea that we're not forced to buy or sell something. That the power itself to make that investment decision resides in yourself. If you're the person who is ultimately in control and making the decision, and you're not forced into doing something, Graham wraps this up very beautifully. For he would then be spared the mental anguish caused him by other persons' mistakes of judgment. The more colloquial term is sticking to your guns. Stick to your principles, to why you bought the thing in the first place. When you purchase the investment, you're not being forced to sell it. Do you actually want to sell this thing? And if all these people are telling you need to sell it, are you going to listen to them? Or are you going to stick to your core principles? If the company is still operating normally and hasn't changed its fundamental principles and how it works, and if it's anything, hopefully maybe it's even getting better, then maybe you don't sell. That wasn't the point of buying the security in the first place. Perversely transforming his basic advantage into a basic disadvantage. It's as if to say, by listening to other people's mistakes of judgment, the power that we have, the good that we have, the gifts, the talents, our research, all those things now hurt us. It's not even that they don't do anything. They actually will have a negative impact on our investment. Benjamin Graham's advice is timeless from an investing standpoint, but it is also timeless from a life standpoint. There are a few things in this world that we gotta do. We gotta eat, we gotta sleep, we need shelter, we need clothes, basic necessities, we gotta pay taxes. You have to pay taxes. But there are many things that we don't have to do, that we're not forced into doing. These are things that we ultimately have the power of choice. But sometimes we give up that power of choice to other people. And sometimes we agree with what they say. But sometimes we don't agree. And when we don't agree, do we decide to still take action, give in to peer pressure? Or do we stick to our guns? Do we stick to our principles and decide not to take action? When appropriate, we should exercise the power to say no, lest we give up this incredible power of choice. That our basic advantage to choose becomes our basic disadvantage. If you can generate and create the discipline and the mental temperament to adopt that view, not listening to the crowd. When there's a bear market and everything's tanking, you don't sell. And when things are going, really, really high up, you don't buy. You listen to this advice. You don't let the views of other people go against your core beliefs and ideas. And when you can do that, both in investing and life, things will be much better. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate it. It will help this channel out. Leave a comment. I'm still trying to get better at making YouTube videos and things of that nature. And so feedback, positive or negative, will always be helpful. All right. I've said enough. I'll see you soon.